Okay. All right. Okay, we're calling to order the City Council special meeting Monday, September 15th. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Edgar.
Here.
Councilmember Gross.
Here.
Councilmember Kusamoto.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Murphy.
Here.
Mayor Graham Mejia.
Here. We'll move on to item 3, special orders of the day. Interview applicants for Park and Rec and Cultural Art Commissions. Staff?
Council, we have 3 positions open on the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Arts Commissions. They're scheduled to expire at the end of September. We've recruited for this. This is our second recruitment. We've received 2 applications for 3 positions, so we'll recruit again after tonight's decision. We have 2 applicants, Emil George and James Main. Mr. George has confirmed attendance. Mr. Main has not confirmed, and I don't see him present in the audience right now. Council may interview Mr. George and consider Mr. Main as an applicant as well. And a motion and a second will be needed for appointment.
Perfect, thank you. So can we have Mr. George step up to the podium, please? Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, thanks for your interest. Do you have any opening comments you'd like to make, or would you like to go straight into the
I
question?
do. We can go right to the questions.
Great, thank you so much. Troy, we'll start with you, number 1, and go down the council.
Great. Mayor, I'd also just like to just make a disclosure. Emil and I, although this is the first time I've seen him applying for a commission, I serve on the Casa Youth Shelter Board with Emil, and there's no conflict of interest there. I just wanted to disclose that.
Perfect, thank you
And,
so much.
Good to see you.
Likewise.
Yeah. What special traits, characteristics, or experience do you bring to the Parks and Recreation and Cultural Arts Commission?
Well, as you mentioned before, I've been on the board of directors at Casa Youth Shelter for the last 12 years. 3 of those years I served as president. I've owned my own business in Los Alamitos since 1993. I also serve on the board of the Los Alamitos Chamber of Commerce. Those are the primary areas where it would seem they're directly related with the community and serving the community, and I think that allows me to bring some experience to the commission.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rich.
Thank you for applying. Why do you want to serve on the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Arts Commission?
Well, I grew up in Los Alamitos. I was born and raised here. I played at those parks. My kids now play at those parks. And I have a strong sense of community and wanting to give back, and I think this would be a good step between Casa Youth Shelter, the Chamber, and something more associated with the city. I think it's a good balance. I have a little time to give you, and I'd love to give it if you allow me.
Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. Okay, what do you think is or are the most significant issues facing the Parks and Recs Cultural Art Commission?
Well, I don't have any direct experience with the parks. I don't know the variety of issues that are facing the parks because I haven't served on any kind of commission. But I can imagine, having lived here my whole life, I know that an issue must be allocating fields to local sports, planning events for the community, general maintenance on the fields, and really, I have to be honest and say that I don't have any experience. So I'm guessing those are some of the primary problems you face.
You're interested. That gets you a good point right there. Okay, Warren, next.
Okay, thank you for being here. So in your own words, what do you feel the role of the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Arts Commission is in Los Alamitos?
Well, it's no secret that parks play an important role in the community for many things, but it helps maintain our property values, it helps maintain our citizens happy, healthy, and it keeps our kids, it's important to keep our kids safe in these parks, and I think those are some very important aspects of the Parks and Rec and Cultural Arts Commission.
Thank you.
I guess I should do the same disclosure from the standpoint that you and I both serve on a board of another association, more of a management association, and share the same park for commercial buildings.
Different kind of park, right, Dean?
That being said, when you consider actions of the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Arts Commission, how would you balance the best interests of the entire community against the likes and dislikes that you may share?
Well, and I suppose in a position like this, your personal likes and dislikes don't matter as much as the community's likes and dislikes. You're here to serve the community, so it's the community first. If they want something, it's your job to do your best to achieve those goals for them. So I suppose that's the balance. It's community first and my personal feelings second.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. So do you have any closing comments or anything you'd like to say to the
I don't. I just want to thank you for considering me for the position.
great answers? Thank you for coming tonight.
All right. Thank you.
Wendy, we haven't had a confirmation for the next gentleman as to his attendance. Is that correct?
Correct. Staff has emailed him and left him several voicemails, and we have not heard anything
Okay.
back.
So is he scheduled for 15 after?
5:10.
5:10. Okay, so he's a little late. So what I would like to do, if the council is comfortable, go ahead for Mr. George, take a motion in a second as to, the direction we want to go. And then that way, if the second applicant comes in, we can move it to the end of our next meeting and take that interview at that time. Does that meet with the support of the council? Okay, so I'll entertain a motion and a second.
I'll move that we appoint Mr. George.
Do I have a second?
One second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Great. Welcome to the Parks and Rec Commission. Glad to have you. Thank you for coming in. All right, so what we'll do now is we'll move on to the second item for this evening, and that would be 3B, review of the draft individual joint use agreements for McAuliffe and Oak Fields and draft master joint use agreement with the Los Alamitos Unified School District and discussion of future individual joint use agreements. And so we're going to go ahead and step down to this table, have a round table. Okay, are we ready? All right, so if we could, I'd like to ask staff for a staff report regarding this item.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. We're here tonight for an additional workshop item on the various individual joint use agreements that we have, draft agreements in place that are as part of your agenda tonight, and a draft master joint use agreement with the school district. And we've had numerous meetings with the joint working group and numerous meetings between staff of the school district and the city. And this is really intended to pick up kind of where we left off the last workshop discussion and try to get direction from the council to staff, and we will then go back to the working group, and the working group will take that feedback back to the school board as we go forward. So want to have Corey Lakin, the Director of Community Services and Recreation, go over what we have so far, what we have today in front of you, answer any questions that the council may have, and we will look for any direction from the council tonight. And with that, I'll hand it over to Corey.
Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, thank you very much for having another workshop tonight about the draft individual joint use agreements for McAuliffe and Oak Fields and a draft master joint use agreement. The agenda item presents the two individual joint use agreements in draft form for both McAuliffe and Oak, as well as the revised draft master joint use agreement. Staff is seeking some basically theoretical approval of these three draft agreements and direction from the City Council on the negotiations of the additional 4 individual joint use agreements for the Oak Gymnasium, the outdoor basketball courts, the community restrooms at Oak, and the bike and walk path that leads from Oak to Coyote Creek Park. Again, I'm going to spend a little less time on the background since I provided that at the last meeting, and kind of go more into the general discussion. On page 2 of the staff report, we have had at least one joint use agreement going back to 1974. All 3 joint use agreements are currently expired, and that's why we are working on redrafting them. We've only had them for the Oak Gym, the Oak Fields, and McAuliffe Fields, and now we're looking at adding the other elements to the other 3 locations at Oak. The city, we presented on July 21st to the City Council a workshop on the draft IJUA for McAuliffe Fields and the draft master joint use agreement. But there was some discussion on having an additional workshop, so that's why we're here today. The City District Working Group met on August 26th and asked staff to continue their work and start to draft the Oak Middle School field joint IJUA. Basically, what we did is we took the IJUA for McAuliffe and flip-flopped the responsibilities of the maintenance. So as it stands today with the draft individual joint use agreements, the city will maintain all of McAuliffe. It's about 7 acres of land. There's the 2 big fields that border Bloomfield, and then the track and the track field. The city will maintain, Public Works will maintain all of that turf as well as the track, and we will charge back the district half of the water on those fields. On the other hand, at Oak, the district will maintain the 10 acres of grass and track space over there, and charge back half of the water bill at Oak back to the city. The lights at both locations, the city maintains 100%. The city retains 100% of the revenues to pay for the lights, the ongoing expenditures, as well as the replacement of light bulbs and that sort of thing. That's the big kind of nut to crack. Is basically it allows for a 50-50 sharing of maintenance and revenues and expenditures. The city now maintains about 6 acres at McAuliffe, so they would take on the additional extra acre, the track field and the track. So that's one cost associated with it, as well as we're not currently paying the water bill on the track field, so that's an additional cost. And we don't pay any of the water bill at Oak currently, so paying 50% of the water bill at Oak will be an additional cost. So the additional costs, again, have a range of anywhere between $18,000 to $20,000 per year. Right now, most of it is budgeted in the fiscal year 14-15 budget. Only about $1,200, $1,300 is not, and that's basically for the fertigation that was not budgeted at the track site. The Oak extra charges for Oak will just depend on what the water bill comes back as. Obviously, you've seen that it's been redone recently. New irrigation has been put in. New turf has been put in. It's still in the growth stage currently, expected to open November 1st. Water at that location obviously can range, anywhere between $10,000 and $25,000 would be our share, again, based on the usage. We hope less water, obviously, because of new irrigation system. It can get the water out better, spread the water out in a more incremental manner rather than, one area being dry, so you have to water the whole area more. And obviously, new turf, new grounds, some new dirt moved around, that sort of thing. So that's the hope. But obviously, until we have a full year's worth, and obviously if it's 100 degrees outside, then you have to use a little bit more water. The draft master, so that's the gist on the IJUAs. The draft master joint use agreement houses all the legal language and the broad terms and timeline for the IJUAs. A new subsection was just added to the draft master joint use agreement since the last workshop, the district will continue allowing the city to utilize the district land next to Oak School, which is currently being used as a parking lot, sidewalks, and play areas next to the community center. So basically, if you draw a line from the fence line where Oak ends and the Supermedia parking lot begins, if you continue that line all the way down to Oak Street, and go back to Oak, that property is the district's, and they just wanted some legal language in there that basically says because the city will be responsible for that area. It's basically the entrance into the community center parking lot, the patio for the youth center, and all the walkways that lead back to the gym right next to Roberts Park. Additionally, this was in the last report, but the new language, the other new language for the master was in the CIP funds. Basically, what used to be referred to as the per head fee is the CIP fund. Both the district and the city have a separate capital fund set up for the fields currently, and are accumulating a few $1,000s from the first 6 months, 8 months out of the year so far. The big recommendation here, the recommendation is that the CIP funds should accumulate a minimum balance of $500,000 before any money is allocated to a specific project, especially due to the expensive nature of these programs. For example, just the scrub and grub and replacing the irrigation out at Oak was about $1 million. So these capital projects are quite expensive, so that's why we're recommending $500,000. And then the project locations will begin in the order it states here. Start with the joint use field, which is McAuliffe and Oak. The second project would be a Los Alamitos field, and the third project would be a district field. You don't need to spend all of that money all in one fell swoop. It doesn't need to be on one specific project, but that's why we're recommending the $500,000 minimum for if you did want to do it in one big thing. Obviously, $500,000 will be a good starting point. So that's the draft master. The future individual joint use agreements is staff is looking for direction on how to proceed on the Oak Gymnasium, the Oak outdoor basketball courts, the Oak community restrooms, and the bike walk path that leads to Coyote Creek. Staff have had initial discussions with the district staff, and nothing is set, and so that's why we're looking for some direction. So currently the city does maintain the biking and walking path that leads to Coyote Creek. So our recommendation would be to keep that the same, that the city will maintain that pathway. Conversely, the district currently maintains the outdoor basketball courts, and we'd recommend that be the same. It gets much more highly utilized by the school than it does the city or even user groups. The Oak community restrooms is jointly maintained. The school district services it after the school day, and if there's an issue during the school day, and the city has a custodian that comes in and cleans it at nighttime. So we both restock, we both clean up, and it's well maintained. Obviously, it's brand new, so our hope is that it lasts a while without needing much rehab. It's all industrial grade, meant for an outdoor park and that sort of thing, so hopefully it'll last a while. And obviously if there's vandalism, then we'll work on that issue and try and get cost recovery. But our recommendation would be to continue to split costs there. The Oak Gymnasium was recently upgraded and updated, modernized. It's beautiful if you haven't been in there. Really, the custodial type work, again, just like the restrooms, our staff go in there in the evening time. Our custodian goes in there in the evening time after our programs, dry mops and cleans up and picks up after, and so does the school district. So we'll continue to do that. Really, the annual cost for that is refinishing the floor annually. It's between $4,200 and $4,600 a year. So if we were to split that expenditure, it'd be about $2,300 a year for that project. Additional costs like utilities and any maintenance is unforeseen at this time. We just don't know what's going to break in the near future. A lot of the stuff was just replaced, so our hope is that there won't be a whole lot of maintenance for a while. If we were to go 50-50 on the gymnasium like we do with the fields, then the biggest impact to the city that is known would be the splitting of the revenues. Currently, the city brings in 100% of the revenues, about $20,000 annually. So dividing that revenue with the district would result in a loss of about $10,000 to the city. In short, the fiscal impact for the two IJUAs that are before you today for McAuliffe and Oakfield, it's about $30,000 to $45,000 annually based on the water consumption and the cost for water. Again, most of it has to do with utility costs and staff time to maintain the extra acre of turf at McAuliffe, and adding the fertigation. Obviously, we'll be maintaining the track field in its current condition. Obviously, Tony and his crew can't totally rehab that without a major influx of cash, but they will maintain it at its current condition. And then the fiscal impact for the additional IJUAs really just depends upon what happens in the negotiations. If there's predictability of the utilities and what things might need to be replaced, we could do an estimate, but we do know that about $2,500 in refinishing the floor, and then the $10,000 in revenue sharing. So it's anywhere between 0 and maybe $15,000 if we throw in some extra capital. At this time, if you have any questions, the attachments, there's several attachments, including the draft joint use agreements, as well as a brief breakdown of the costs range.
Thank you. Great job. We'll go ahead and bring it back to council. I'm going to have Councilmember Kuzumoto go first. He was at the meeting with the school district. I was unable to attend, so I'll have him go first, and then we'll bring it back to the other council members.
Thank you, Mayor. So, and thank you, Corey, for this report. So, if I understand, I think we really want to try and get at least one of them behind us, right? Because that'll, I think, kind of then pave the way to get the other ones done. And McAuliffe, I think, is the closest one that's finished agreement. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, the hope is tonight that if you've got changes to either of the current IJUAs, obviously, the way staff took them as kind of just a mirror image. So if there's changes to one, likely there'll be a change to the other. And then the master joint use agreement, we just want to make sure we're headed down the right path. And then if some just general direction, if we want to continue down the same path with the other joint use agreements, or kind of take the recommendations again to no costs for the basketball courts, but we pay 100% of the costs for the bike path, that sort of thing.
Okay. But I think the two big issues are the Oak and McAuliffe, right? Those are the two big ones. And then secondarily, I think, would be the gymnasium, and then I guess the bathroom one, the restrooms over here, I guess we'll have to figure that one out, because we had invested a sizable amount in that as ourselves. But anyways, I think council, the one thing I think if we can provide to staff is that I believe we're going the right path. That'll be the questions that you'll have for us as the joint ad hoc, as well as staff. But I think if we just focus on McAuliffe as the first part, that'll set the template. Oak, as Corey was saying, is the mirror image of McAuliffe. But the unknowns again are the expenses for watering. But we'll have to just see what those are. I think the big conundrum is no separate metering. I think is the big issue right now, right?
Oak, I believe they have set it up to meter separately, and I know that we've talked about at McAuliffe.
That's new.
That they will.
That's new?
Correct.
Yeah, so we don't have any past history on it.
Correct. Well,
Okay.
it's
Right.
almost like a brand-new field. It's
Sure.
got new grass that we haven't planted at any of our fields before. It's got a new irrigation system, and yeah, it hasn't previously been
Right.
a standalone meter.
But we'll have the data at least to make adjustments if any are necessary. So with that, back to you, Mayor.
Okay. I'm going to just ask one question before we move forward of the city attorney. City attorney, if we were to change the contract for the gym, which right now is the sole responsibility for the district to upkeep, is that correct, Corey?
Correct. Right now, the expired agreement says that they will maintain the gym.
Right. So for historical purposes, there was a contract that was in perpetuity that the four entities would help build the gym, but then the district would be responsible for the maintenance of it. We've given them $300,000 in just like the past couple of years to improve the gym and also to add the bathrooms, which were going to exclusively be for us, and now we're sharing them with them. So not that I have any opposition to that, but just for historical purposes. Carrie, if we were to to change that contract, would that then negate the prior contract that says that in perpetuity they are to be responsible for the maintenance of that entity, the gym? Yes. Okay. All right, so anyone else? Troy?
Yeah, I guess at this point, you're looking for direction. The way the staff report is written, this is kind of an advisory as for us to give you feedback and then potentially move to the next step, correct?
Correct.
So earlier today, after looking through all the documentation, I had an opportunity to meet with staff earlier this afternoon. I went through a lot of my detailed questions. I guess at the highest level, the thing I would say, one of my questions that I asked that I do want to talk about today is that the involvement of the Parks and Recreation Commission. And, our commission is an advisory to us for all of the activities that we need to put on, and we haven't really utilized that. We may or may not want to, but I think we need to be clear that we made a conscious decision one way or the other. This is a big deal. It has a lot of effects on the programs. This contract, just like with the pool at the base, just like even in Rossmore, where they have elementary schools that affect the soccer groups that we actually help host here. I mean, there's a lot of cause and effect, and I would just say, I just think it's important for us strategically to be balanced in how we're dealing with the school district. This is a big change for us, and it kind of seems like philosophically we're going towards trying to be equal, and that's probably the right thing to do, where we're trying to say, hey, look, let's share costs equally. If there's a benefit to be shared, let's share that. And, we have other discussions, through the budget process earlier in May and June, where we talked about some of the other areas that potentially have cost impacts that are also related to the school. And I think we need to act independently on this, but we ought to be thinking bigger picture as, we've got a significant dependency on the school district. Without them, we wouldn't be able to provide a tremendous amount of opportunities for quality of life programs that we do. I just want to make sure we don't push our leverage too far, is that I think that, although we gave them $300,000 to help them with the gym, there's a lot of money that they've put in. I would subscribe to a lot that the taxpayers put in through Measure K, and I just don't want to be too heavy-handed. For the community's benefit, Corey and Brad, the involvement of the Parks and Recreations Committee, when we usually have pretty sticky political things that we need to deal with, a lot of times we'll utilize the commission to make sure that we have full community support. What would be your recommendation to us, considering the Parks and Recreation involvement of evaluating this? Do you want a strong recommendation for us and give, some direction to the Parks and Rec, or is it for review, kind of the RACI model, is we're just going to send something by them and have them just evaluate a high-level advisory? What do they think? What is their role in this process?
Typically, their role is an advisory commission to the council. So ultimately, if in my mind, if the council gives direction that you're happy with the way that things are going and provide direction, we can bring the agreements to the commission for their blessing, and if they have questions that are raised, then ultimately we can either bring them back to the council, bring them back to the city district working group, or make the changes thereof.
So from a timing perspective, to follow on with Councilmember Kuzumoto's perspective of, do we need to hurry up one over the other, what is our timeline here?
I don't think we have a specific timeline. I know both the district and the city, we'd like to move forward and get something done. I know, my own timeline was hopefully by the end of the year, the calendar year. So I think we do have time. Obviously, we've got 3 other joint use agreements to write. So we can take them in stages to the commission. We can take them all at once to the commission. Obviously, they will come back to the council and to the full district board for final approval. So likely, I think we're at best still a couple of months away from getting everything approved and signed off. So I think we do have time.
And without getting into too much detail, and Brett and we've talked about this, if we start our strategy as we're going to try to be treating each other equal, that has implications in a lot of the different arrangements that we have with the school. I just want to make sure staff is kind of thinking those things through, kind of cause and effect. If, we've talked in the past, school crossing guard, SRO officer, all of these things that are out there, we're trying to set a standard of how we're going to deal in the future. I mean, sometimes things like this, when you have a good long-term relationship, clarity brings friction. And now we're starting to clarify things and bring it out of the darkness and into the light. And in the middle of controversial things like track lights at the field, and all of us got to remember there's 1,000 things we deal with, not just one. And I just want to be really sensitive that we don't overreact here and then have a problem somewhere else. So in the end, we lose. So that would be my only advice or guidance on this at this point. And directionally, I'm on board with this, and I think it's really important to have this equal sharing. If you think about it, though, the school district's 10 times bigger than us financially, so then it just becomes an issue as if we have an agreement directionally we want to be equal, then we need some understanding on timing so we can catch up. Because I don't know if we'll be able to afford equal right now, because especially in the short term financially. Thank you.
I agree from the standpoint that I think we're headed in the right direction. I also share what Councilmember Edgar had to say in terms of proceeding cautiously and making sure that the idea of sharing is rated appropriately so that we're not digging ourselves into a hole that we can't address. I recall back on the user group fees, when I was on the ad hoc committee, there was an agreement made at the ad hoc committee level, and I think council pretty well understood it. When it got to their board, it was dramatically changed. And so in moving forward on this, I would caution that if they approve something, that we're going to have an opportunity to review it first before if we're going into this together, we need to be on the same page together. Changes of significance really need to be agreed to by both parties. Back during the budget hearing, when we talked a little bit and discussed the water issue, discussion came up about potentially finding water from Long Beach, from the city of Long Beach, in terms of recycled water, which they use for their parks and a variety of programs. Earlier today, I inquired about that and learned that we've not really had an opportunity to explore that, but since we're sharing cost on water, I think it's extremely important that we explore that to find out. I think Councilmember Edgar mentioned that they have a recycle plant just over the bridge here in Long Beach, so access to it probably isn't going to be as difficult, especially for Oak. And then again, we just need to explore it, because I think that's behooving on us, both the city and the school district, to see if that can be done. I did express earlier with staff that I'm a little concerned about the unknowns from the standpoint of the costs, and in some situations where we've not borne that cost before, now we're going to take on 100% of it. Again, from a budgeting standpoint, looking at it, I don't know where some of those funds are going to come from. And we're pretty well decided from the standpoint of the budget and the reserves. So I think we need to proceed somewhat cautiously, and I agree, maybe it's a staged-in thing rather than all at a one-time deal. Maybe it's over a 2-year period, a 3-year period, or whatever, but the ultimate goal then would be intended in that particular fashion. I don't have any disagreement with the trail over to the bike trail and Coyote Creek along there. The one issue that I do feel in that particular area that needs to be addressed is because the remodeling at Oak, a brand new higher fence was put along that path. on the north side of their parking lot. The prior fence was a little bit lower, but cars coming in and parking would hit the fence and bend it over. That's already occurred once on the brand-new fence. And so at some stage, if we're going to maintain part of that, I don't know whether the fence itself becomes part of that agreement or not. The obvious damage to the fence along the parking area needs to be something, because there's history with that, needs to be something that's determined as part of that agreement. The Oak Gym, I think again, there's some historical issues, as you mentioned. The original agreement was 4 different parties contributing toward the gym. Again, looking at the idea that we've kind of reached an agreement on, that City Hall is ultimately going to be replaced into a different area of town, means that that building, the community center, and the building that the youth center's in, is going to go away. And that's one of the discussions that needs to occur relative with the youth center. That also is going to bring up some discussion regarding the gym and whatever rights they've had for recreational use, play use from the standpoint of that property. And I think staff needs to be wary of that when they're looking at the gym use agreement as we come up with that joint use thing. The restrooms, I think, are a joint situation from the standpoint that the school, obviously, when they have kids out on the field and PE and playing on that blacktop area there in the back, or even out on the field, it's really a joint shared thing. So I think we do what's right. I don't disagree with you that everything in it's new and it's state of the art from the standpoint of anti-vandalism and things of that nature. So I don't expect that to be a big issue and a big problem. The last thing regarding the Oak agreement and the JIPA or the JUPA, the grass that was planted on the field was done under contract with the school district, and they inadvertently, the contractor inadvertently introduced a new weed, and it created a problem which has created a delay toward opening of the field. And much like we've said regarding the Coyote Creek development, there's got to be some type, or should be some type of a warranty period that plays into this. And so if we accept the responsibility from the watering and the maintenance and things of that nature relative to the field, I think it's just the water, the maintenance the school's going to do. We need to make sure that whatever warranty was done on the grass occurs within the same process, so that we're not suddenly, created with additional watering unbeknownst because they've got to redo something or they're doing something in that area. Again, I think that's more timing from the standpoint of when these agreements go into place and the changes occur. And with that, I'm passing it back.
Okay, great. Rich?
Okay, I'd like to thank Brett and Corey for taking time to meet with me also today, and to the ad hoc committee and the working group. I think you guys did a great job. And the cooperation between these two large institutions is good to see. I would like to point out that in my mind, the 50-50 along the way has been a placeholder for fair share. Fair share does not mean equal. So I'd like to see some numbers as to if we feel 50-50 is the correct number. So far, I've treated it, like I said, as a placeholder for till we're able to figure out exactly what is the fair usage. And I do mean fair. I'm not saying if it's 50-50, let's call it that, but let's back it up. Okay. The one problem I would have is the word perpetuity to me is very non-ambiguous, and I strongly feel that the gymnasium should be treated just like the Coyote Creek Walk and the school outdoor basketball courts. We have an agreement that works, and in this one we have a long time agreement on the gym, and I think that like the other two, we should keep it as it is. With that, I'm done.
Corey, could you answer the question for Richard regarding the usage? I know we've asked that question at the ad hoc meetings. I believe it's a third, a third, and a third, isn't it, Corey?
Correct. Our analysis from 2 years ago when we first started all this with the field fees was basically the district has use of the field about a third of the time, the city about a third of the time, and the user groups about a third of the time. Based upon a 10 to 12 hour a day and shortened time during the winter time and longer times during the summertime with lights and with the amount of usage and summer breaks and winter breaks and that sort of thing. And we can try and revisit that and pull those numbers back up. The hard part is it's based on 2 years ago numbers, and it's based on theoretical usage. We can rent it out. We can offer programming during those times. Obviously, it's not always utilized 100% of the time, but even during the school day, during lunchtime, the school district doesn't use it. So we can try and go back and confirm those numbers again and put some real numbers to it and look back and make sure that that's still what it is. And obviously, since then, we do know for a fact, since the fees went up, that some of the user groups have utilized less field space. We've also been pushing some groups away, private organizations, and not renting it out to them to try and allow the field some downtime to rest it. That's a part of a higher level of maintenance of the fields is resting the fields. So while we could rent it out from, on Saturdays and Sundays from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., we don't want to do that because we need the field to rest during certain days and certain times so the grass can grow. Otherwise, Tony's guys won't be able to do much, or neither will Anthony's guys from the district.
Okay.
Just real quick, I'm not looking for a master's thesis. Just look at the usage, look at the availability of the usage, say, hey, maybe 60-40, maybe 50-50, whatever you think, whatever you want to come back to with, just so it's been reviewed is really what I'm asking on that case.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, and I'll go very quickly because it's almost time for the regular meeting. I agree with Rich with regards to the existing contracts for the bathrooms, the walk to Coyote Creek, and the gym. I think, the people that came before us showed great wisdom in putting that in place, so if it's not broke, don't fix it. I am concerned, as the other council members, regarding the water and the unknowns with that, so I would support Rich's recommendation or request that we get some potentially numbers that we can base our percentage on. Not to be unfair to the school district, because they're great, they allow us to use those, and if they didn't, as Troy said, we wouldn't have the programs that we do, so we're forever grateful. But I do think before we enter into this, in our last meeting for the budget, Councilmember Redger said we could potentially be going into the next fiscal year with a $400,000 deficit. So I think anytime we're going to talk about spending money, we need to, if possible, have real numbers so that we're basing that with the knowledge that we know we can afford it or we can't. We don't want to be unfair to the school district and make a promise that we can't keep. So with that, I'll ask anyone else if they'd like to address this anymore. No? Okay, so we're going to go ahead. Staff, are you clear with the recommendations from the council?
Yeah, if you don't mind, if I can just
Great.
recap, so for the McAuliffe and Oak, we want to get try and get some better, more secure numbers for the watering at Oak, and then go back and look at the number of hours that it's being utilized to confirm that it's 50-50 split. But in theory, those are okay. The master joint use agreement, I didn't hear anybody talk about, so I'm assuming that in theory is okay, as is. Obviously, with the caveat of we know that there's potential for the CIP fees to change possibly based on the interpretation of the new legislation that came down for for what the school district, or what's allowed to be charged on school district property. So we'll work with the district on that if they have a timeline, but either way, that will have to be revisited once that legislation gets interpreted. And then for the Coyote Creek, the city will continue to maintain that. The outdoor basketball courts, the school district will continue to maintain that. The restrooms, 50/50, and the gymnasium continue with the old agreement.
That's what
Kind of the
my
gist.
interpretation was.
I just have one other, we talked earlier today as well, the Civic Center Act that the district wants to impose. I would like to have all the council get a copy of that so that we're aware of what that may contain as well.
Yeah, we can forward that link. I believe it's, Patty, that's online, correct, that they can access? The Civic Center Act, the regulations, is that online, that they can?
California law and regulations.
Okay.
Yeah, so
So we can forward that link.
Point of clarification, Councilmember Gross, they're not imposing it, it's imposed on all of us, right? So,
On all school district property, it's a state of California law.
yeah, so.
Yeah, they have to comply.
LAUSD is not imposing it on us.
No, but I think Dean's saying it could have an effect on us, so
Sure,
that we
it
should
does.
be
Yeah, it
informed.
does.
Yeah.
I just don't want to clarify that. It's
And-
just imposed on all of us, and
Right.
it's just a matter of getting an understanding of it.
Thanks for adding that last part, Corey, regarding the future CIP. I appreciate it. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Thank you.